Is alt season cancelled? According to the YouTube comments, probably it is. But that's not often the best indicator. Let's take a look if alt season is actually cancelled indeed. Because the 4-year cycle is kind of hanging by a thread. Alt season is part of that cycle. So if the cycle is going to play out different this time, then will alt season also play out different or not play out this time? Something to consider. Now, I want to base this on what I think we should base it on, actually, and not the typical stuff like there are too many altcoins. I already want to get it out of the way because, yeah, that's simply not true. I know that a lot of people might feel that way, like, well, I mean, there are millions of altcoins right now, and where is all that money like coming from, right? Then you have to understand, though, welcome, by the way, like the video, hi. Then you have to understand, though, that if you look at the total market cap on coin market cap, it's $3.13 trillion. And if you look at the total market cap right here, this is 3.08. So the cool thing about this is that shows how nothing all these other altcoins mean. Because if you look at TradingView, this only looks at the top 125 altcoins. So $3.09 trillion in the top 125. CoinMarketCap has thousands outside of that. And it is barely a difference. So I already want to get that out of the way. All these altcoins out there, they are either dead, rocked, gone, nobody knows about it, or they are so low cap that they won't take the liquidity from the actual run. So that's not something we should take a look at. What should we take a look at? What's the reason an alt season happens, right? Think about it. It is the euphoria that comes in. If you've been in an alt season before, then you know that euphoria is not for no reason. It is because there is simply too much money in crypto. People feel stupid rich, and therefore they do stupid shit, and they throw it into a JPEG, into like pictures of rocks, all these NFTs, but also the crappiest coins that you can think about, they fly. However, at this point of the market, we are sitting in a correction right now, and people are acting like we are sitting at 20K again. So if that's now the stage of the market, then of course people are not gonna buy and pump all kind of low cap altcoins, right? So is it, fair to assume that alt season is gonna happen right now? That doesn't make any sense to me, but I do want to show you what the real reason could be. Now, also, I think that a lot of people might want to hear what an alt season actually is, right? Because in 2017 we had a good alt season. In 2021 we had a good alt season, and most people probably think like, well, that's a period where altcoins just go completely crazy. And yeah, in practice that always happened indeed. Like if an alt season occurred, then altcoins like went completely crazy. But the pure definition of an alt season is where altcoins outperform Bitcoin, because you have two things in crypto initially. Bitcoin, that's crypto. And then we have altcoins, alternative coins to Bitcoin, whether it's ETH, whether it's actually stables, all considered altcoins. But hey, let's not call stables altcoins, but hey, there you go. So if alts outperform Bitcoin, that's an alt season for a durable time in a massive way where it's really alts time to shine, right? I think it's wise to have that confusion out of the way. I got this comment on the channel, and I noticed I think a lot of people think like that. Alt season already happened in March and in November 2024. So to be clear, that wasn't an alt season, right? If you look at March, this is altcoins versus Bitcoin. If we call this an alt season or this an alt season, yeah, this was a 30% pump, right? This was a 60% pump. In the last market, we had multiple occasions where we pumped 70%. Here, the altcoin market, it pumped another 65%. Here, we had another bounce of 37%. Here, we had another bounce of 74%. Like then, if we look at it like that, we already had like 12 alt seasons. But that's not the definition of an alt season. So what we want to see if we talk about an alt season is what altcoins on their Bitcoin pair are outperforming, right? right? There are again also other charts to look at, right? For example, the Bitcoin dominance going down always went hand in hand with Altseason, because it means Bitcoin is dominating less compared to everything else. But everything else nowadays is also a lot more stable than what we had back in the day. Therefore, the Bitcoin dominance is still an interesting chart, but for measuring altcoins, it is getting less accurate and it's not so relevant anymore as what it used to be. Therefore, I think it's wisest to just look at altcoins without any stables on their Bitcoin pair, because that's the actual thing that tells us if they are outperforming right now. Now, the thing is, you could say, right, there is no retail in the market right now, so who's going to pump it? I don't think we need retail. But let's say that's the case, then that's a good thing, right? I mean, if there is no retail, then things are low. Everybody's sold, everybody's out. Just like this spot over here, or even the whole accumulation area, was no retail. Like, this was boring. People were not here. And because they were not here, it was so easy to pump it. Right, so we could say hey, there's no retail. That's a bad thing. I would feel worse if retail was completely all over the place and that we were still over here. Then I was like, okay, fuck, but they are already here and it's still not pumping, right? That's even worse. So the fact that there is no retail, there's a lot of retail, but not in the euphoria sense as the last alt seasons. But the fact that there's no retail right now, that's good, and that only makes it make a lot of sense, right? However, there's retail, there's me, there's you, there are a lot of viewers, there is a lot of people right here, right now, but there are just a lot of different ways to measure that, right? For example, Kouwen measures it on his website based on YouTube views, Twitter followers. That's a way to do it. Then again, he also looks at Twitter followers for chains like Terra Luna or FTX, right? Like these kind of things. And I feel yeah, okay, but that's I don't think that that's actually the retail that we have right now. There are ways to measure it, for example, by looking at the Coinbase app rank. There's Google searches right now. There's a lot of stuff that you can actually use. There's some retail, but definitely not indeed like what we had in the last cycles. However, do we need retail in order to get an alt season? Or do we need an alt season in order to get retail? I think actually the second, because it is not a retail that just comes in at low prices and feel whoa, what a great buying opportunity. Overall, retail is the one that pumps pumps the final pump, right? They buy the tops. So they don't start at the lows, they start at the highs basically. So also, if you think about it, if everybody's already scared right now, then let's say we go lower or this is the low, but what make retail come in like this, right? They don't. Of course they don't. They first want to see it go up and then they start to believe in it. I mean, half of my comment section lately is already filled with these guys. No offense if you're one of those, but maybe a little bit. But let alone the people that are not even in crypto right now, right? That's not how we think about this kind of stuff. So what makes it go up then in the first place? Well, what makes it go up in the first place is that it has to go down in the first place, right? See this chart as liquidity. Right? At the top, there is a lot of liquidity, and it makes it really hard to make this chart go up further. At the lows, liquidity has been sucked out of it. So the little liquidity that comes in makes it pump really hard. Think about it if you go to Pump Fun, right? And there's a coin with a $5 million or $5,000 market cap with, $300 liquidity. Yeah, if you put $5,000 in that coin, you have a huge price impact, of course, but then you literally can pump that chart. Well, that's basically what happens on a larger scale with the complete altcoin market as well. The lower the liquidity, the easier it is to pump. Therefore, you'll always, of course, see these big pumps coming from real low levels, right? Of course, you cannot be sitting high and have that God candle still like at a certain point that will top, right? So just to know for the people that feel like, oh, low prices are bad. Yeah, I don't know. If you bought here and you are now here, then it feels bad. But if you feel like, hey, is this a good buying place? Then yeah, that is the place to buy, of course, right? And this is the reason. But what drives it up in the first place? Like here, what made this go up? I mean, if you look on X, right, formerly Twitter back then, the sentiment here was kind of copy paste as what we have right now. People literally said, Altseason is a myth. It won't happen. It's a Bitcoin only run. There's no Altseason. It's never going to happen. Altcoins are dead. I'm converting to Bitcoin. You should be only in Bitcoin. There are institutions right now. All that stuff was said over here. And then it went fully up and all these people got fully wrecked. Fully wrecked for simply being bearish at low prices. It's what it is. It's how it works. It will always work like that. Yeah, and then you get wrecked again if you're probably bearish at bullish at high prices. Right? It's just the psychology behind it. Again, I know that for a lot of people, it's now really easy to be bearish and really hard to see that it can ever happen again. But if you've been in crypto for a while, you know that that's exactly how it works, right? It feels like this could never happen again and it's dead, it's over, and then it happens, of course. No, this is kind of technically the reason why. So why did it pump? Again, for the third time, and now with an answer, actually, sorry. Why can it pump? Because there are whales in crypto, right? And I don't mean necessarily people like Michael Saylor. That's a Bitcoin maxi, right? But there are a lot of whales and also institutions that also buy altcoins. Always have been, always will, right? There are now also even altcoin ETFs are here and coming. But apart from that, whales. What do whales do? People with a lot of money, they can look at the S&P. And they could be like, I can put my money in the S&P and we had a good year for the S&P, right? A real good year, a really, really, really parabolic year even, right? And in that parabolic year, what did the S&P do? It's now up with 17% and it went up 20% or so. That's it. So whales can look at the S&P and be like, yeah, that's nice, but fuck that, right? Like, it's not that interesting. Then they look at Bitcoin and they're like, damn, that's a low liquidity market, right? This is low liquidity. So, of course, they are going to buy Bitcoin then. And why Bitcoin? Why not altcoins? Again, imagine you have $50,000 and you're scraping pump fun coins with a 5K market cap. You won't get anywhere. You will have a bigger price impact. Then like that doesn't work for you. It doesn't work, right? Plus, why would you? And why would these whales? Because they see that Bitcoin has insane gains. And at the moment, yeah, look, if you put Bitcoin against, gold, for example, right? So it's looking. At the moment, gold has its moment, right? Here it had its moment, here it had its moment, here it had a real outperformance, its moment, real outperform, like always happens. And now at this point, gold has its moment again. That's fine. If you look at Bitcoin against the S&P, for example, you can also see that now the S&P has its moment. It's also fine. But whales are not crazy. They see, hey, Bitcoin is wiping the shit out of gold and the S&P off of the table, right? You cannot be a long-term bear for Bitcoin or for Bitcoin against gold, against the S&P, against whatever, right? Stock market just doesn't work like that, or metals or whatever, right? So whales, they look at Bitcoin and they're buying it. At a certain point, Bitcoin is going into a correction. And this might be the one, I don't know. But at a certain point, Bitcoin goes into a correction. That doesn't really matter. Whales can stick to that. But if they notice that the Bitcoin dominance is also going into a correction, Then they actually see like, okay, you know what? We had a good run. We made money. Bitcoin is no longer profitable compared to what else is out there. Let's switch. And then they take the money out of Bitcoin, makes Bitcoin go down. What's happening right now? Putting it into, let's say, Ethereum, which is now, again, on the last 2 days going up a little bit. But I don't think that this is that switch necessarily right now, though, yet. But they, for example, put it in Ethereum. And they make the money with that, right? All right, that's cool. If that, right? Because it's not that. And these whales get that. Then they take the money out and they put it into alts. Right? And if you look at alts versus ETH, these people are smarter than you or I or whatever. They like, we just have to try to understand what they are doing and go with them. We can't fight against them, right? Like, you shouldn't try to do that. So that's what they're doing. And that makes altcoins go up like really hard, because that's not a little bit of money that these whales are playing with. They take a lot of liquidity out of Bitcoin and they put it into the altcoin market. Now, again, if you look at the altcoin market right now, compared to where it came from, you can see that the altcoin market basically has no liquidity. So a little bit out of Bitcoin into the altcoin market makes the altcoin market on the dollar pair go up like crazy in no time. Right? Therefore, especially these levels are a good buy, because the lower we go, the higher we can go. We have a top somewhere, we have floor somewhere. Right? Here, people thought we could do it 10x. Now we're here. Cool. Then we should now be able to do it 30x. Right? For some reason, we lower the bar as well if we go down. Shouldn't do that. That has nothing to do with it. Right? But that's what happens. And you can see it as well in the last cycles. If you overlay Bitcoin on the altcoin market, what do you notice? Every time so far we got an alt season, it happened when Bitcoin went on a dump, right? The first leg of 2017 alt season was here. First leg. 2017 was pretty cool. It had like kind of 2 legs basically to it. First leg was here. Bitcoin down from like $1,300 to $950. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a pretty fat ass correction, right? Alts went up. Cool. The second was here at the Bitcoin top. Bitcoin topped out, but not maybe because it like will start like we're done. No, altcoins were still sitting low against Bitcoin. So there's more to get from here. So that will happen, and alts exploded right there. Even when Bitcoin had its top, altcoins on the dollar pair, the higher cap still went up like 4x or so. Crazy. And in 2021, the same happened. Right? See right here, this is where Altseason started, exactly on a big Bitcoin correction. And again, also it doesn't look big because it's on a line scale. But if you look at the beginning of January 2021, what happened to Bitcoin right there? Bitcoin had a correction of more than 30%. Right? So yeah, and I mean, if you look where we are right now, Bitcoin has a correction of 28%. And it happens to be that the dominance is going down a little bit right now. But again, I don't want to call that. I think that there's another reason. We will get it, which I'm going to get into. But I first want to lay out like, hey, this looks to be what's happening whenever we get that alt season, right? Now, I know that there are a lot of people that are, of course, looking at the crypto market and they say, it's that. And then it goes up, it's that. And then it go up, and it's that. And it go up, it's that. And it go up, and it's that. And eventually they go in the bear market, it goes here, and they were like, I was right. Okay, cool. And the same goes for alts, right? Every single time, again, I hear the same things. Alts are dead. There are too many altcoins. There is, I don't know, only a Bitcoin run. Yeah. And it will wreck you at a certain point. Right? Last thing that I want to show for the people that feel like, oh, what if it's because of alts? Well, let me show you this. Alts on their Bitcoin pair right? So this is basically the low cap stuff versus the one big high cap, right? Looks the same as the Russell against the S&P, right? The lower cap companies versus the higher cap companies. Also right here, we had that big run in 2021. And since then, it's basically down only with occasionally a dead cat bounce. Yeah, you can call that a coincidence, but I don't think so. These charts are pretty similar, right? If you look at these charts, sideways, up, down, different scale, so it doesn't look like that, but it is. So if you look at these charts, I don't know what my trading view is doing, so bam. If you look at these charts, the movements have been exactly the same, right? So again, that shows to me, apart from the reasoning that there are not too many alts actually, that this is a macro problem, a macro environment. It's not even a problem. Right, the inflation from 2017 up to 2021 was way higher when it came to new altcoins than it was from 2021 until now, actually. So that's not a problem, because back then in 2021 it didn't stop us as well. So the same, Russell, S&P the same. So this just shows we are not in a risk-on environment. Does that make sense? Yeah, of course, we are in a non-risk-on environment. If you look at the interest rates, they're still sitting really high at this moment, right? And there's now speculation like, well, Powell do a cut next month or not? And I'm like, even if he does, it's just bringing it like here, right? It's not going to be more than 25 base points anyway. So I'm like, it's more like the message than actually the money flowing into the market. This small cut doesn't make the market risk on anyway. What does? More cutting. And the stop of QT. Now, the stop of QT is already announced. We're getting that from the 1st of December. So that's actually a very positive thing for the risker-honor assets. And so that could only help. I'm not saying that it's QE, right? We could get that maybe later as well, but QT is at least stopping. Now, all these things lead back to the ISM. Again, and I spoke about the ISM many times before, and this seems to be everything that we need to take a look at in the first place, right? Because I've showed this like, yeah, okay, Bitcoin correlation with ISM is clear as day, right? And if you look at this, like I said, we can stick to the 4-year cycle, right? But then how do we explain 2011, for example, right? Well, the ISM explained it, right? Explained every single top, not just when the top was, also what kind of top. ISM, blow of top. Bitcoin, blow of top. Same. ISM for the first time. Distribution phase. And when you know Bitcoin. Well, and there are many more examples that I can give you that makes this like, okay, here we go, right? This is it. But it also goes for altcoins. Right now, it might explain why we haven't seen an alt season yet. Because an alt season so far always comes at around the end of the cycle. It's kind of what's finishing the cycle off, right? Because altcoins pump because of whales. Retail sees that and be like, whoa, altcoins pump. They get in. They are the final exit liquidity. And then it's done for the cycle, basically. Well, we haven't seen that yet, right? And why? Because the business cycle is obviously now not in a 4-year cycle. It often has 3-year cycles, 5-year cycles, even longer than that, right? In the last 3 cycles, it happens to be 4 years, right? And therefore, people might feel like that there's a 4-year cycle in crypto. But in reality, the ISM is now just, again, it's being a little longer than the 4 years. And next time it could be shorter, right? So yeah, sure. That explains, let me get the chart where I have it, but that explains why there's no Altseason yet. Because let me overlay Altseason on that chart, and then you'll find out something pretty interesting. Also, the crypto total market excluding stablecoins completely broken. Actually, looks very bad. Just kidding. But you might be interested in fractals and all of that. But I just figured, like, okay, it's kind of interesting to see that a pattern ish like this can be broken, and that could be a reason for people to turn bearish. But I just want to let you know, like, hey guys, you can also put it like this, right, where it was like way more accurate right here, and we broke it here. So you could have thought like it's all over, but what did we do? We kind of 30x'd even more. So don't pay too much, but that's off topic. But again, if we look at the ISM, then you can see that the ISM is basically an oscillator for the last 75 years, right? This will go up again. That's no question. The question is more, when will it go up, right? When will the ISM go up? Well, I made a metric myself for blockchain decoded called the oscillator risk metric. And if you apply, you get 3 for the price of 1, I guess. And if you look at this is just very simply looking how much time in the last, in this case, 250 months has it spent below the level where we are right now. And that's currently 24% of the time. Below 20, it's flashing green. And then it says like, hey, these low levels are not sustainable. And this works perfect on oscillators. Also just very simply showing, hey, ISM, when it doesn't answer that, but overall the direction to be bullish or bearish, screenshot it and go check it out. Take the red zones, take the green zones, and there you go. Screenshot. Like, this is a perfect indicator for these kind of things. But apart from that, we need the ISM to go up, because it doesn't only mark the Bitcoin tops, but if we overlay the S&P, for example, and this is where it gets quite interesting, if you ask me, let's also make it orange in this case. It shows whenever the S&P has a top or at least a slowdown, right? So you'll know that it's not just, oh, coincidence 4 times for Bitcoin or anything. You can take this back as much as you want. You can see that every time the ISM topped, the S&P topped. The ISM topped, the S&P topped. Or it just simply slowed down. That could also be the case, right? For example, right here, the ISM topped and the S&P, it kind of slowed down, went up after that, the ISM went up more, and it kind of slowed down, but not really into a fat bear market. So it's either a bear market or slowing down, right? Yeah, now it's very simple, and you can check the history that we have. This is the indicator that we need for this kind of stuff, and it also makes sense because this is simply businesses creating new orders, right? They're ordering new products. Yeah, if retail is broke, then they're not going to buy it from these businesses, so businesses are not going to order it in the first place. And if retail is too broke to buy whatever, they will also not buy Bitcoin, let alone shitcoins. Right? They're simply not going to do that. So this is the leading indicator, and you can look further into this by looking what is the Fed balance sheet doing, what is copper versus gold doing is a pretty interesting one. What's the 10-year yield doing? What is the interest rates? What are they doing? The inflation data. But it's all part eventually of how this chart is going to look, right? Now again, QT is going to stop. Rate cuts, we might not get it for next month. We might, but it won't make a huge difference in the long-term effect anyway. But Powell is going to get kicked out his office, and someone very more dovish is going to replace him, like I said earlier. And yeah, that person is more likely to cut, which is going to drive the ISM up. You can have very short explosive moves on the ISM. You might be like, well, we're sitting almost at 50 and probably next month it's going to be 50. So that's a small increase, but that's at least the phase where you want to be. But if you look right here, for example, we were sitting at lows in May, right? And in like 3 months later, we were already sitting at the high range. right? And it can take a little longer, but overall, the average duration based on the history from what I calculated from the current point to the top range is about 8 months, right? So I've said this before. I wouldn't be surprised if we just simply slow grind until May, right? And we get bumps and crashes and dumps and corrections and I don't know what in between. But the real bull market is probably gonna start somewhere in May if that's the case, and yeah, might end in I don't know, August, September next year. It could be a very so. Then eventually we had a 5-year-ish cycle. Could be the case. I don't know. It's not. It's hard to predict because you never know if the Fed is actually going to do what they say, right? But this is eventually all that we need to take a look at. Now, when it comes to Altseason, again, look, if we overlay Altseason on this chart, here you go. Let's make it nicely green. Let's keep it on this far now. But let's make it nicely green. You'll notice, like, and again, there's not a lot of data points to work with for Altseason. Right? But you'll notice that Altseason started here, right? When the ISM was already sitting high. Right? People want confirmation that things are looking good. And whenever it is actually looking good for a while, then they feel like, let's get into the low risk assets. Here as well, Altseason started here. Whenever it was already sitting high. Yeah. Where it is sitting right now, this is not a reason to get an Altseason right now. Does it change anything that I think about Altseason though? Like, no. Because if you look at Altseason, then I'm more looking at levels, right, instead of necessarily time. Because again, for Altseason at first, I was looking at the 4-year cycle. Yeah, but the whole 4-year cycle is not a 4-year cycle. So it doesn't make sense to base an Altseason based on that. I'm not ruling it out that it could still happen next month or whatever, but I don't think so. What I do think, though, is that fuck that. Like, if you look where we are right now, I'm like, man, if we DCA this area, right, DCA here, if it goes a little higher, fine. If it goes a little lower, DCA a little bit more. Overall, if you look last cycle, do you think that the people who DCA'd on average at the point where we are right now, they regretted doing that? Really? Like buying here on average? And then like maybe writing it down a little bit, maybe buy a little more, and then bam. Like, I'm not trying to time that bottom because nobody knows where that bottom is going to be. All I know, TA-wise, there's a low range, and we went to that low range in June. Right? So it's not that the target isn't checked off or anything. Right? We have checked off the low range, but yeah, could it go there again? Like, yeah, sure. I mean, in last cycles, it went there a couple times. It doesn't mean that it has to this time, but it could. Right? So I'm like, fine. Whatever it does in the meantime, I don't really care. But I'm not like looking at this right now and like, yeah, it might go lower, so I'm gonna get out right here. In case you get this with the risk of missing out on this. That's not so smart, I think. But again, if you look at the ISM with Altseason overlaid on it, yeah, it is pretty clear to me that this is also simply just following the business cycle. And yeah, it makes sense, right? It makes more sense than simple dates or whatever. You can also see how correlated it is lately, right? We had this bounce, this double top by the ISM. We have this double top in Altseason. ISM went lower, Altseason went lower. We had a pretty decent bounce on the ISM right here at the end of last year. We had a pretty okay bounce for Altseason. ISM went down again. Altcoins went down again. ISM is going up again. Alts were going up again. ISM was down. Alts are now down, and now the ISM is in a small tick up. Next month, we'll probably be sitting here at 50. So it could be that the low for altcoins is in, but that it just ranges for a while. And I don't think that price targets are even that interesting this cycle. It's more time targets, because it's pretty clear also if you look at the sentiment, people lose patience. Right? And I think to be a winner in this crypto cycle, you have to have more patience than others. Right? It's always PvP. You have to have more patience. Right? But overall, apart from like whether it takes 1 month from now, 5 months from now, make sure you're just not in a rush, right? Then it doesn't really matter. It's something nice to look forward to. Overall, if you look at everything we have, it's looking great. What do you need for an alt season? Again, terrible sentiment. Terrible sentiment. Well, we got that. Like, I cannot post a video without people thinking that they're smart for being bearish and laughing. So, like, I don't know. They think it makes people feel better about themselves to make up that other people are wrecked or anything, right? That's really the sentiment. People are starting to dislike each other. It's like, I don't know, man. It's it's kind of Squid Games in somewhat kind of a way, right? Like, oh, do I need to kill you? I don't want to kill you. And eventually everybody fucking tearing each other up, man. That's kind of crypto right now. Crypto games. So, terrible sentiment, check. We cannot have a good alt season without terrible sentiment, right? So I love that we have that, actually. Rate cuts. Well, again, Powell's going to be replaced. This is huge because he's kind of working against everything right now. Right, so that's huge. QT is going to stop after years. That's huge as well. If you look at the Fed balance sheet, this thing has been going down since beginning 2022. What was that? Ah, yeah, okay. Remember that time, right? Alt season stopped there, basically, right when QT started. Yeah, now it's finally going to at least stop going down. And bear hair in my nose. Can't stand these. That's what we need, right? Now, what we need, of course, are low prices, but that goes together with bad sentiment, right? Prices on altcoins against Bitcoin are at a good place right now. We have the Bitcoin dominance weakening pretty hard right now. I mean, you can, for all I know, it could bounce here, but I am pretty confident to say that the top for Bitcoin dominance is in for this cycle. Right, so that's fine to see. And that there's money in Bitcoin. Because at the end of the day, altcoins being worth more against Bitcoin is just simply a matter of Bitcoin's money flowing into the altcoin market. Right? If Bitcoin is sitting like anywhere above $40,000, it's going to cause a huge alt season. Last alt season started when Bitcoin was sitting at 30K. Now, of course, altcoins were also lower back then, right? But therefore, Bitcoin is now 90K. Right? And I dare to bet that whenever everything plays out and the ISM is up and Powell's out and these rates are being cut, Bitcoin is sitting a lot higher than 90K. So there's a lot of money flowing from Bitcoin into alts. And the thing to wrap it up with, I said this a couple times, but keep it in mind. The last fall by the Bitcoin dominance was not big. Right? This was not big. This was a decline of 13%. That's it. But this was when that money flew into ETH. Because during that period, ETH BTC went up a lot. This was no money flying into altcoins. This was just a small ETH season in between. But ETH on the dollar pair in that period did a 3.5x. ETH was a $180 billion market cap coin back then. Right, so I'm like, man, if a coin with a $180 billion market cap and like a ton of more liquidity than any other altcoin out there. If that coin can do a 3.5x on the dollar pair when the Bitcoin dominance is just like goes into that correction, then whenever the rest plays out, and I think, like I said, we go to around 42%. Look, you can say like, well, if I get a 3x on my alts, I'm lucky. I don't know. I think that if you get a 3x on your alts and you actually walk away with that, you are very unlucky, because I think you've sold way too soon for that in that case. Right? Because even, again, Ethereum example. But yeah, and then there's of course also, right, the low cap alts versus the high cap alts. Beautiful oscillator as well, right? So it could also be that, hey, I mean, look at Zcash right now, look at BNB right now. People say like the market is bearish. It also kind of depends what you're in, right? We have an XRP that did something. We have BNB that was sitting above $1,200. Zcash is completely ripping and having its moment. And please don't buy the top, because that will also pass again. We have Solana. These high caps have a lot of liquidity. So even if there is not even an alt season, we just need the rotation from high caps to low caps. Yeah, we can add everything. We can look at it and be like, well, that's not going to happen again. That's not going to happen again. Fine. But keep in mind, if it does happen, yeah, it takes nothing to pump these alts really hard from these levels. Does it mean that they cannot go down more than what they are right now? Sure, they can go down more than they are right now, right? Again, altcoins on their Bitcoin pair have been outperforming lately, right? Last couple of weeks, they have been outperforming. They're doing better than Bitcoin during this correction. However, if this now goes down, maybe to the range low again, and Bitcoin is still in a correction, then altcoins can take a big, fat, beautiful hit. But you have to remember, there is a target. Start there. There is a target. And then it depends. From where are you going to get to that target? That defines how much gains you're making, right? Apparently, this was the target right here, right? Yeah, if you are all in right here and you write it up, you made a nice 118%. And if you hate that it's going down, yeah, then it means that you are already all in. And I've said this but never be all in. I am in a good amount of cash during this whole correction, and I haven't done nearly anything with it. I shuffled a little bit, but I'm still in cash, and it makes me feel very comfortable, actually. Because if we get such a move down, and you don't even buy anywhere near the low, right? But you buy here, for example, then that 118% can turn into 320%, for example. And that's against Bitcoin, right? So imagine dollars. So be smart with the funds that you have. And I would say, like, if you are now at the moment already all in and you feel like, yeah, but I also don't want to sell at this moment, sit it out. Sit it out. You wrote this or wherever you stepped in, but you're going to sell here? Like, why? Because it might go here again? It also might go here again. You really waited 4 years to miss that? No. I hope this helped a lot of people, and mostly actually the people that are always in the comments like, it won't happen. I don't think you, like, with this information, I hope you can now also see why it could very easily happen. Because the danger is not for me, right? I'm prepared for both sides, and I hope everybody is. But there are a lot of people, like, you can say, like, well, being altcoins is right fucking risky right now. It's been lower than what it has been in a long time. At this point, it's riskier not to be in the market, actually. So thanks for watching. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. See you in the next one.